right? Even all the modern history, political science, any subject, coaching will be done. You have to read, revise them. Only then it will be in your brain. Yes? How many of you know, how many of you have seen Lakshmikant? All of you have Lakshmikant. How many of you started reading Lakshmikant? Yes. So what are you doing? You are preparing for UPSC. It's like saying, you know, I took a bus. The bus will go to any destination. What is the purpose? What are you achieving? Okay, 1 month of your UPSC preparation. What did you achieve? Quantifiably tell me. Sir, this is what I have learned in the last 2 months. Right? So, see, this is not something new. You are not the first or the last batch. There will be 10,000 other batches as well. Don't assume that you are preparing UPSC, you have joined a coaching, that means automatically it's a golden ticket to IAS. It's the most ridiculous idea ever. Please keep that in mind. You have to work on your own. Right? Unless and until you don't work, you are not going to convert it. I don't know how else to say. See, there is no smooth talking or sugar coating, because it's your life, 1 year of your life. What will happen 1 year of your life? Your peers will be getting promoted. Your peers will be joining specializations. Your peers will be doing MBA or something else. After engineering, you directly came here. All of those people will be advancing in their life. What are you doing? I am preparing for UPSC. 4 years, you know, I have a friend. First attempt prelims fail, second attempt interview, third attempt prelims fail, fourth attempt interview, fifth attempt prelims fail, sixth attempt she skipped. 6 years of her life passed away just like that. And what is she doing? Preparing for UPSC. What is her peers doing? They got promoted, they got into married life, they are settled. What will you say? Preparing for UPSC. What are you preparing? You have all the knowledge in the world, but will anyone look at you? Are you going to get anything? Sir, I have given 4 interviews. What will you do? Yes, take out the printout and use it as a tongue cleaner. 4 interviews. What will you do? Does anyone care? Either you are in service or you are not in the service. Only 2 things. This is the only exam where 99% success is not success. Nobody cares. If you got 99% in CAT, you get into some IIM or some other MBA institution. Sir, I gave 3 UPSC interviews. Next time if you fail prelims, does UPSC invite you to mains? It doesn't even look at you. Your competition is an IRS who is already in the service, and you people are playing here. He is already in the service. He wrote mains, he cleared interview, he got into service, he is preparing again. He is your real competition. You think anyone is in the room is your real competition? Anidip Durisetti, IRS officer. He used to read newspaper, read Spotlight News Analysis, do his job as an IRS officer, then join some institution to get some answer writing practice. Oh, Anidip Durisetti, who can write so good. Does he need any mentor help? Why? No matter how high you fly, still you need someone to tell whether you are going in the right direction or wrong direction. You cannot have all the knowledge in the world. So why did he read newspapers? Why did Kanishka Kataria, IIT guy who wrote, Gaurav Agarwal, IIT plus IIM, why did he read newspapers? Because no matter how smart you are outside, once you enter into the UPSC, you have to follow the traditional rules of UPSC. Only then you will have some kind of success. Right? Please get that idiotic, Narayana Chaitanya type of mindset from your brain in its entirety. Coaching is not IAS. Coaching is only just a 30% to the max. Okay, 70% hard work is to be done by you people. If you don't read, you won't remember it. If you give me mains answer, I will write all the committee names and recommendations. When you hear them, oh, sir said so many names. After 2 months, I will ask you, will you be able to repeat all the names? No, you have to write, you have to make your own notes. Then slowly things will get into your brain. Yes? So talk to anyone who is roaming on the roads for the last 5 years or 6 years, UPSC in the name of UPSC preparation. They will tell you how devastating the life will be after UPSC. It will be much worse than 2004 tsunami. You have given up so much of your academic career, life and all these things for what? Come here and do time pass. No, right? You have some goal. Then you need to understand where you are going. In my I was a student of Vajiram way back in 2010. Okay, in my entire class, only 3 people had 100% attendance, and within them, only 2 people got interview calls. So your first filtration starts at the stage of preparation itself. How serious are you? How desperate are you? So we had a class of 240. In my batch, there are 10 batches like that in 2010. Now you can understand how much after technology penetrated, how many aspirants are competing. Back then 1.5 lakh applications used to come. Now 15 lakh applications are coming. IIT, IIMs, doctors. Where do you actually stand? So see, be very clear about UPSC. This is not some romantic dream. Okay, in my childhood I wanted to be an IAS. I went to coaching, I became IAS. Nobody ever told me that story. Yes, even Tina Dabi, first attempt, first rank. She prepared from 2011, first attempt. After 5 years of preparation, she got into IAS first attempt. Both her parents were IAS officers. The grooming will be entirely different. How many IAS officers have you even seen in your real life? Did you spend time with them? Do you know their body language or their thought process? There are a number of issues. Okay, so why am I telling you all these things? Because I won't lose anything, you won't lose anything as of now. Okay, but once attempts increasing, your pressure will mount. Handling your preparation in that pressure is next to impossible, trust me. Okay, so AIMS gold medalist was roaming on the roads for 5 years. UPSC did not even give him a second glance. Outside the door, you are a hero, whatever you are. School topper, college topper, district topper. Once you enter the coaching or UPSC field, what are you doing now? A second class degree holder and a IIM gold medalist. Both are equal. If you work hard, both will get service. If you don't work, nobody will care for you. Okay. If you become district collector, you are a demigod, or else you are a dog. Okay, not even your street dog will give you a second glance. Oh, this guy, same room, same 5 years, same UPSC preparation. Every day Hindu paper will come. Please, get out of that lethargic mode. You don't have to work superhuman times. 8 hours. 8 hours of study, 8 hours of relaxation, 8 hours of sleep. 8, 8, 8, 3 8s. If you can achieve that throughout the year, that's more than enough. But I can guaranteely tell you, hitting that 8 golden mean on an average of study time is very, very difficult. It's not that possible. Either you study 14 hours a day, next day 4 hours. Okay, hitting that golden mean of 8 hours consistently every day is next to impossible. Yes, because when someone is already filtering you all the data and telling you this is what you need to know, this is the path, even for walking that path you have problem, right? So I don't even consider all of you as serious aspirants. That is why I told you, right, labor force. Once you start writing in the mains hall, then I will take you as a labor force. Till then you pursue whatever you want to. I am the best UPSC aspirant in the country. Okay, fine. You have to show me by going to the mains hall. Then only you will earn respect. Not only of me, any UPSC faculty. Be very clear. If you don't read newspapers, you are digging your own grave. No, nothing else will happen to me, institution or anyone else. It's only your life you are spoiling. You are the villain in your own life. Read newspaper before coming to the classes. Okay? Right. So terror funding of Saeed. So how will you look at this particular article? You can look at this particular article in 2 ways. One is diplomatic victory for India, where we pursued UN to declare Saeed Hafiz as a international terrorist, which China successfully blocked many times. UN resolution 1267. In spite of that, India was able to get him labeled as a designated terrorist. So this is a diplomatic victory, and now he is thrown into the jail. Okay, so that is the positive direction of the things. Why Pakistan is doing this? Financial Action Task Force. Pakistan wants to project itself as a good country in the eyes of the international forums or international media also, so that it will create a positive framework for its own agenda. Either way it's a diplomatic victory for India. For whatever reasons Pakistan have done, it has thrown them into the jail. That's a good thing. Now the ground reality is, once you use the sugar cane Okay, you throw away the pulp. Yes or no? You don't bring the pulp to the home. So Pakistan has used Hafiz Saeed for 70 years. Whatever he has done, he has done. All the damage, all the blame has been shifted to him. So if you have seen the Iron Man movie 3, Iron Man 3, there is this, what was his name? Ben Kingsley. Ben Kingsley is like just a dummy, right? So Saeed, Hafiz and all these terrorists are just, puppets. All the activities are done by Pakistan army. If any blame is there, who is a culprit? Hafiz Saeed. So these people acted as a buffer between the Pakistan official government and international governments. So Pakistan protected them till they were very, having high utility. Once their utility is running off, now they are thrown to the dogs. So this is a time tested strategy by all the dictators or any other countries, so specifically Pakistan. Right now Pakistan will be grooming other terrorists, right? So it is still continuing its own activities, but it is protecting the its own future by arresting him. So ground reality and truth. So UPSC perspective, diplomatic victory for India. Internal security.
Increase the hate towards India also. No? I mean, you can have more people joining the terror ranks. I mean, to seek revenge on behalf of him. You can have more people coming into India.
So definitely that angle can also be explored, but at the ground level everybody knows, let's assume, what is happening in actuality, because he was treated as a house guest of Pakistan. He was given all the luxuries, right, even protection, etc., etc. So they know what is happening at the ground level. So I don't think this will particularly convert into radicalization agenda, but again I might always find some excuse. If I want to get radicalized, any doctrine will do.
On the contrary, can we see it as Pakistan taking its actions against terrorists and trying to build a friendly relationship with other countries?
So
I mean, in a positive sense, as an optimistic group.
it's a very hard bargain, because Pakistan wouldn't have fired the shells to protect the infiltrations just 1 week ago. So I mean, it's very hard or naive to believe that Pakistan will ever change. As I told you, it's not about revenge. For example, let's say you are a Pakistani general, you have genuine hate towards India. You cannot maintain it for 7 decades, right? Or your children won't understand the same pain as you go. So here the interest is monetary. As long as I maintain that India is the enemy and you need me to protect, Pakistan people will start believing in Pakistani army. So to protect my own interests, or to protect or to make people believe that I have influence over your protection, right? That is why Pakistan keeps making India as a enemy. So the vested interest here is money and my own self importance. Why will people give me respect? When people know that, see, people know I am not perfect. People know I am doing some atrocities. People know that I am doing into real estate business, or I am using all the power to accumulate or self-promote myself. That is the Pakistan army generals, right? They will do corruption, they will do some abuse of power. People know all these things. In spite of that, why are still people having some belief in Pakistan army? People think that India is the enemy. Without Pakistan army, that Pakistan won't survive. So that narration is very strong, right, in a common man's perspective, and it's not something that easily you can change off, right? Even many Indians after 2019 elections, when they asked why did you vote for Modi ji, so the many domestic helpers or Gurkhas or all these people or rickshaw pullers answered, he protected us from Pakistan, right? That is their genuine answer, and we cannot doubt their intentions. So they genuinely believed that if not for Modi ji, Pakistan would have attacked more. Balakot, because of Balakot, India is more safe. So government did not contradict that statement because it's helpful for their own political agenda. So it's people who assumed that it's the Indian army or it's the Modi ji that is protecting Indian government. So if we can think that the same thing can happen on the other side of the border as well. Okay, so they are into real estate, and the more bogey you raise, that means the more negotiation power you have in the country. For example, if America comes and if America wants Afghanistan help, it is not going to the Prime Minister of Pakistan, it is going to the army of Pakistan, right? So money comes again to army. When China negotiates, it again negotiates with army. So army has multiple interests to protect its own perspective.
We can also use this as a case study in the radicalization, like some parts of India where people are being radicalized. We can say that if at all you are being radicalized, there are chances of you being shot in the same way, like Saeed has been. Like we can stop them or prevent them.
Again, I do understand, like it will act as a deterrent to the young terrorists, but you know, they might see the other way around, hijacks might happen.
But means we need to create that atmosphere that if at all something, if you trust in Pakistan,
End of the day you will be
so
we can spin a positive narration, but I seriously doubt how many people, I mean,
if we incorporate that into all the things, like being radicalized, we can't stop it. But with this narration, we can do it.
yeah, definitely. See, first of all, the entire radicalization and all these things has this romantic angle. That means it's like, you know, I will become a terrorist. I will.
But if we can show the fate of this terrorist, then they will.
Again, that is what I am saying. For 70 years, you have treated him as a king. So, if you died one day like a dog, but for 70 years you are living like a lion, it will damage more than create a positive spin. That is what I am saying, right? Because for 70 years they protected him heavily. Yes. Have you seen the movie Baby? Akshay Kumar. Yes. Inspired by that movie Munich. Yes, Spielberg's Munich. So the Israeli forces done the same thing. So we want to do the same thing. So you can understand how important he was for the Pakistan. Think about it. China, a country which does not have anything to do with Pakistan, has obstructed his being labeled as an international terrorist. So unless Pakistan requested it, why will China obstruct it? So that kind of importance you don't find for normal people. Okay. Yes, there are so many articles in editorials today. We will start with a world in chaos, a movement of truth. World in chaos, a movement of truth.
This was more like the security threat question that you had to ask.
Which one?
More like the
Security threat. Yeah. What are the security threats that the world is facing? So wherever he mentioned Donald Trump, you can always incorporate, you know, any other politician and it will still sound the same. So his warnings are true, but again he does not give any solutions as well. So it's more like a prescriptive analysis of what is happening in the world. The democracies throughout the world are under threat.
So can we say the security threat in US affects the other countries?
The security threat in the US affects other countries. How?
When US is facing problem, may other countries face this?
See,
Does other countries also get affected by that?
again, there are two ways to look at this particular perspective. Whatever you are asking is, US is a net security provider to the world. US is a net security provider to the world. Because of US, there is some kind of stability throughout the world. People fear from acting certain ways because US or US army is in that particular area. So Israel or Saudi Arabia directly don't go into because of US, right? Or North Korea and South Korea don't fight because of US. So US is more or less like a net security provider. And till recently also, whenever India and Pakistan had an issue, they used to fear, right? US might intervene. We don't know whose side US might take. So there used to be some kind of, you know, moral pressure on these countries. Now we know if there is ever with Pakistan, at least 2021, we have hope that it will take our side. Again, it may or may not be. US might say it's not my problem also. Okay, right? So in that sense, yes, whenever US faces this kind of uncertainty as a democracy, it will definitely affect the rest of the world's security. But what he is saying is the rise of the ideologies, the rise of the right wings, the threat of democracies in multiple ways. For example, information asymmetry, fake news, and all these things, which were reserved only by dictators, now is being applied in democracies. So democracies are learning the, you know, extreme ideologies very quickly, and it is going to hamper their own ideologies, like the core democracy itself. So again it's a very grim prediction that he is giving, that world is not so in a better place, world is in turbulence, world will have lot of problems. So you can actually argue with that, you can continue with that, yes, world is not so doing great. At the same time you can say there is still hope. Joe Biden has won the election, so that means there is still good people who believe, you know, whatever Donald Trump stands for is not true, right? And time and again even BJP has lost elections in India, so it's not totally true that everybody is, you know, the intersections of the societies are totally polarized. People vote on the basis of issues, not on the basis of ideology. Only up to a certain level they will entertain all these things, but you cannot eat religion, right? You need jobs, you cannot eat caste, you need still money. So I will vote for you because you promised me 15% reservation. If you don't get me that 15% reservation, next time I will kick you out. There is no loyalty for me. So I, as a caste or as a group, as a community, I will look at my own interests first. So transcending all those things and coming to vote for some greater narration, we need to have such kind of leadership as well, right? Talking for the sake, say, why did all the youngsters in India vote for Prime Minister Modi? Because it's not about BJP or Congress, it's about Vikas. Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. I will get you more employment. And personality trait of the opposition is also still weak. So that is all accumulated in the name of hope, in the name of Vikas. For a positive thing I have voted. It will be so naive to believe that people voted only because of Hinduism, right? So you can see the same in modern Indian history as well, right? The industrial labor has a different set of expectation, farmer has a different set of expectation, women have a different set of expectations. Everybody thought this is what is I am going to get after independence. Everybody strived for independence for their own reasons. It was not about national narrative or patriotism per se, right? So the same thing applies even in today's world. So those who have read that article, any doubts?
Sir, in terror is written in the third one. He says the new procedures are way more dangerous than the last terrorism. What does he mean by that?
That he means, you know, old terrorists had this psychological limitations or psychological fears or lack of logistics, etc. For example, let's say you are a terrorist in 2000s. All the activities you can do probably can be identified by someone else, right? In the last minute those plots used to be diffused. Now what is happening, thanks to technology, radicalization, encrypted messaging, encrypted video calls, your life has become more easier, right? And your target nowadays is about pompousness. You are sending a message. As I told you, IS is like a franchise. You do any terror activity anywhere in the world, you use my flag, I will take the credit. That is why it is very dangerous. Earlier what used to happen, it's like a spider web. If I catch the spider, I know where the web is leading. Now it's an invisible web. And the damage can be anything. The Sri Lankan attack. Okay, first of all, some radical, white radical or white extremist in New Zealand shot dead some, you know, Muslims who were praying in a mosque. So for the retaliation, 300 innocent Christians were killed in a bomb blast in Sri Lanka, right? So that means whatever you are targeting, you have achieved. Hate gets hate, and using this, some other country, somewhere Muslims will be oppressed. One radicalized youth will come out of that particular community. So it's a vicious cycle that you are creating, and all this is happening without a proper snake head. If I cut off the snake's head, snake will die. Now where is the snake head? Anybody can claim I am the leader of ISIS, right? And he can be in any remote location and he can create a virtual empire. So that is why ideas are very difficult to kill. So ISIS, as I told you, got very popular because of the, you know, irrelevant policies followed by USA. They attacked Iraq. Okay, they attacked Iraq. Iraq is a Sunni dominated, outsourcing the terrorism. It's outsourcing the crime. The traditional way of, you know, all the terrorists meeting in a cave, discussing under solar lamps, those days are gone. So that is why it's more dangerous in more ways. And now terrorists can have many activities: drugs smuggling, trafficking, women trafficking, girl child trafficking, organ trafficking. Yes, so you will get money from any part of the world. Bitcoins, transfer it through bitcoins. You are funding the terror organizations and you are creating enough damage. But the thing is, world has also realized this. Throughout the world, all the countries are now more or less discussing about terrorism, and India is a front runner, or a leader in that particular aspect. Wherever prime minister goes, he definitely discusses about terrorism. So the fight against terrorism should be global, right? Global terrorism, global fight. It's no longer about India, Pakistan or New Zealand. Why? Threat of violence anywhere is a threat to peace everywhere. So who would have imagined the threat violence in New Zealand will lead to a bomb blast in Sri Lanka? It's a very difficult world we are living in. But global collaborations are happening. Yes, anything else?
India is again being steadily marginalized in Afghanistan.
Yeah, so again, that is a new kind of challenge, right? That means when things were stable, India has done very good with India maintained very good relations with Afghanistan government. But now Pakistan's influence has gone up. America is withdrawing the troops. Automatically, India's influence will be coming down. So the moment Pakistan's role grow in Afghanistan, India's role will come down. That is the first condition that Pakistan actually sets. Whenever India enters into Afghanistan, I won't help you. So don't invite India. So that is a ground level rule that Pakistan sets. Why? Pakistan doesn't want India to get even 1% of goodwill, so that it can damage all the prospects. Again, he cites the same RCEP. By not joining India, RCEP, India is staying away. So that is also a not such wise idea according to him, right? So China is doing well according to M.K. Narayanan. So though not a democracy per se, China is still doing well. So whereas democracies are having their own issues, China is growing. It's time to wake up for the democracies and focus on the important things, not on the trivial things, not on polarization, not on anything else. Global collaboration is needed for terrorism, climate change, yes, technological aspects, etc. And collectively only we can solve all this issue. Or else if you keep fighting like this, or if you have your own internal issues, China is going to be super powerful and there is nothing we can do to control it, right? The continuation of the same article will be the below article. India's mask of economic liberalism is off. It's a very harsh article. Yes. But unfortunately, for UPSC perspective, you are not going to convert it as it is. Why? India officially did not join RCEP. It's not even in a speculative stage. We officially did not join RCEP. So you cannot take total anti-governmental stand. Somewhere down the line, you have to at least moderate it. You can say sooner than later we might join RCEP, even if all the facts are in your support, because there are two contradictory economic surveys. One says FTA is a failure, the recent one says FTA is a success. Both are government documents only, right? And Ministry of External Affairs, who is supposed to spearhead the diplomatic angle of finance, he himself is saying that FTAs are a failure. So the path India has chosen is bilateral trade. We will strengthen the bilateral trades rather than totally entertain RCEP, as we have discussed. So we don't enter a grouping, we will deal with the same grouping bilaterally. So that can be your balanced hope that India will succeed, right? And his criticism is both true and to some extent not so great, because let's say India actually takes this Atmanirbhar Bharat very seriously. Let's assume so. In ground reality, we take this Atmanirbhar Bharat very seriously and start MSMEs, right? Automatically, we will develop that rapport with the majority of the countries. We might integrate with the supply chains sooner than later. But in the hope of joining, in the hope of making the most out of the supply chains. If we join now, we may not be ready and we will lose the steam. Think about it. Like it's like India don't have an option now. There is no plan B. The only plan is Atmanirbhar Bharat. Let's assume you have joined RCEP. So Atmanirbhar Bharat is not doing so well as you have planned, and you are getting alternative goods from different countries. So the pressure is not there from the people side. People are getting the products they wanted. You will slowly lose the steam, right? As a government, you may not feel the heat of the pressure. But now we did not join RCEP. We are saying we will increase our MSME and we will create a global supply chain alternative to China. You have to do that. You don't have any other choice. So that force or pushing ourselves to the wall is what might work for India, right? The only way is to create a new door and move ahead, or stay cornered, right? Either stay isolated from all the countries in the world, or create your own specialty so that everybody will come to you. So we are pushed to that kind of wall, and I don't know whether it's by design. I think it's by accident, right? But still the thing is, we have to realize it and exploit it, because Atmanirbhar Bharat is nothing but Make in India. Make in India was announced in 2015. 5 years have passed and we actually did not reap any benefits from Make in India with a significant impact. So let's now see how Atmanirbhar Bharat will work out.
We only talk about this particular trade deal, which okay, I mean, for India to grow. Does this mean that the Indian economy is weak, wherein only one particular trade deal will boost the economy?
So like it will make a significant visible impact in theory, at least, right? That means if I join RCEP, my trade volumes will increase, right? So my chances of increasing my GDP or $5 trillion economy, all these dreams will become easier. It's like, the paradigm shift. As I told you, on any day, with or without all these things, we can reach 7 to 8% of GDP growth. If RCEP, the chances are that I might add 2% more or 3% more, because more untapped markets will be reached. So it will accelerate my growth percentage, even if 1% is a victory for any country, right? But in reality, what might happen? Opposite might be even true. If we don't compete with the global things, from 7 we might fall to 5, right? Sorry? Dumping of goods. Again, see, dumping of goods is not an easy. Let's say, for example, there are auto trigger mechanisms. That means after certain quantity of amount, if more goods are coming from any country, automatically anti-dumping rules will apply. That means till 1000 cars you are importing or 1000 products you are importing, you don't have to worry. Free trade agreements will work. But the moment 1001 car will enter India, Indian government rules will change, and it's okay. It's not a violation of free trade agreements. There are certain mechanisms which we try to negotiate, like auto trigger mechanism, origin of rules, stringent origin of rules. So there are many steps. We are pushing. That is what I am saying, right? You must have seen Star Wars movies, no? Okay, in the starting there is a line, right? To go into territories which no country has ever gone before, or no Starfleet has ever gone before. It's like some courageous thing. So India is that country which wants to test these uncharted waters, right? Yes.
On one hand, we are speaking about Atmanirbhar Bharat. On the other hand, NPAs are increasing and banks are failing recently, Yes Bank and Lakshmi Vilas Bank. How can we tackle it?
It's a very good question. And does anyone want to answer that?
We are also trying to rectify those problems by improving FTAs or merging. Government is doing whatever it can.
Sumana, is it you?
In theater.
Okay, everything okay? No, I'm genuinely asking. Now this is the first time I am hearing you supporting the government. So, is everything okay? Health okay? Yes. Yes. So, coming back to the discussion, see, there are definitely multiple ways we can revive our economy. One is foreign direct investment, right? foreign direct investment. The other is by exporting more goods. You have to understand, let's say all of you understand the malls, right? Malls. Okay, now I am saying we have 16 floors in a mall. Okay, you should rent that mall. We are saying that. Okay, so in theory, yeah, if I hire them, that means once a mall is set up, automatically more and more people will come and trade will happen. Now you have joined that, but you don't have anything to export. Okay, it's no use, right? You have hired an entire mall, but you don't have any material to sell, right? You either have to outsource it, right, or sublease it, but nothing you are going to gain from it per se. The initial damages will be severe. You can see that also. We are pushed to the wall. We have joined RCEP. We are pushed to the wall. Our dairy industry or agriculture industry is suffering. We don't have any other measure but to rectify them or revive them. So I am doing that. But in those 5 years, the political storm will be very high. As you have seen in the MSP example, Punjab farmers, right? They didn't care whether it's Modi, Amit Shah, or anyone. Once they hear the term MSP is going out, they are on the streets. So all the political will or goodwill can't help you once people get agitated. The fears are true. So dairy industry is one of the largest employer. Agriculture is also one of the largest employer. These two sectors are the ones that are directly affected by RCEP. Okay. Now coming to your question, think of this as an engine. Any economy is like an engine, right? It has, right, two growth cycles. One is public investment, the other one is private investment. So in theory it is going to increase like this, right? So we have to create a positive virtuous cycle. Now what are the private investments? Foreign direct investment, yes, private consumption, loans. So that means once there is demand, automatically Tata will take loan from SBI or some other bank. He will invest in, he will employ more people, or Reliance will hire more people, more salaries, everything. All the things that can be done in from private sector will be one more virtuous cycle. All the things that government is doing on the other side is government's virtuous cycle. For example, PM Kisan, Narega, right, or infrastructure construction, infrastructure investment, pipelines, constructing of schools, hospitals. So all those things will also lead to employment. When both these engines are working in the same level, or if one engine is bigger than the other, also will find why overall economy will grow. Now his question is, NPS are there. NPS will affect whom? Non-performing assets. The problem with non-performing assets is the victim will be private sector, but the ultimate victim will be government. Immediate victim will be private sector. Why? When high loans are there, twin balance sheet problem is there. So when a company wants to expand, when a company wants to take a new turn, okay, I will stop it here. Why? I am not giving you new loan. So that is NPA crisis. So if NPS increase as per the editorial to 14% or 15% of the loans, that means if 100 rupees is given by all the banks, 15 rupees, 14 banks in India were placed under prompt corrective action. So if more banks are placed under prompt corrective action, inflow to the private sector will stop. Yes. See, one more problem you have to notice here is this: banks, NBFCs, market. Okay, so that means banks are there. Banks will give loans to industrialists, MSMEs, anyone. Even 20 to 40 lakh rupees loan is also a good thing for the economy. So banks are having that issue, right? Because of NPS, I am not willing to give new loan. You cannot blame me. Why? You are a shareholder in SBI. That means you have purchased a share in SBI, assuming SBI will grow. So the bank performance is linked to the stock market. Understand? The loan you are giving as a SBI is a totally different issue. I am purchasing SBI shares. That is a whole different issue. So if SBI is falling down, stock market will also come down, or negativity will be there. or there will be no trust on the financial system overall. Right. Next, NBFCs, non-banking finance companies. They are also like banks, but at rural areas, they will take loans from banks and they will give to the rural areas. Okay. So if banks fail, your NBFCs are also failing. So nobody is reaching the rural area. So all these problems are directly related to banks. So when you stop giving loans to the companies, what will they do? They cannot grow. Though there is demand in the market, they cannot grow. They will stop hiring people. Job losses will happen. Demand will come down. Overall country will go back to recession. Even in the boom stage also, we can halt the country's progress by stopping the loans. Okay. So if companies are not growing, if economy is not growing overall, right, if companies don't grow, economy doesn't grow. If stock market doesn't grow, economy won't appear in a positive state. When all these things are happening, you cannot attract foreign direct investment, right? Foreign direct investment won't come into the country. That means some other person will not invest in the country. They will purchase for cheaper prices. So Indian companies will be losing. Recently you have seen Urban Ladder. Urban Ladder is purchased by Reliance Industries for a very less amount of money. So that is distress sale. So when your economy is slowing down, you will have distress. So if foreign direct investment is coming, that means he is buying the company at a very cheaper price. So that is why government has imposed a sanction of foreign direct investment by Chinese companies into India. They have to take government permission, or else what happens? China is having tons of money, all Indian companies are in losses, Chinese companies will come and start purchasing Indian companies. So that is why government has imposed a restriction. Now on the other hand, what is happening? Government has already spent all the money that it can, right? And unlike a private sector, government has also to think about the public welfare. So if government is spending 100 rupees, it cannot spend all the 100 rupees on infrastructure development or hospital construction or school construction, right? 50% or more than 50% it has to spend on welfare activities. Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, 500 rupees. Vaccine comes, 80,000 crores. Who will bear the money? Probably central government itself. So where will I get 80,000 crores? The same 80,000 crores I can use in infrastructure development, that will lead to more employment, but I don't have that luxury, right? So both the things are equally true. I hope you understand. Private sector has its own advantages and issues, whereas public sector has its own advantages and issues. Now coming back, if banks are facing losses, okay, there is a concept called as recapitalization. There is a concept called as recapitalization. What does recapitalization do? Pump money into the banks to keep them afloat, okay, to keep them safe. So when they are safe, what will happen? They will again start giving new loans. So that is the perspective. So what can government do? Sometimes, let's say SBI, government will ask SBI to give money to Lakshmi Vilas Bank. Directly government's fiscal deficit is not increasing.